This is mbot, which is one of the hobbyist robots we've used for outreach events. Before we start going through the maze, I'll just show you a few of the particular bits and sensors on it, which, as with the other videos, you'll see are kind of similar-ish, but each robot has its own little variations. So at the front here, these two parts here, this is an ultrasonic rangefinder. And so this sends out a series of typically about 8 pulses and then holds a pin high until the reflection of the sound comes back. And so that's how it ends up measuring the distance. And I mean, this one's unique to this part, but there's a very standard ultrasonic rangefinder that a lot of robots use. Underneath, it's got a couple of line sensors, and they shine a little light out, and they see if any light gets reflected back to a photo sensor right next to it. So if it's sitting on some white paper, it sees light reflected back, and if it's sitting on a black line, hopefully it doesn't. I'll explain the hopefully in a mo. Now, these two are quite close together. They're only about, well, a bit less than 2 centimeters apart. And so that means that if you've got two sensors quite close together and you're trying to follow a line, then what you tend to do, if we can pretend these are the sensors for the moment, is you try and keep both of them on the line. And so if the left one turns white, you go right a bit. And if the right one turns white, you go left a bit. And if they're both on the line, you go straight ahead. And if they're both on white, you've lost the line. So let's set this going through the maze. And so this is just printed on top of some stock that gets used for pull-up posters. Now this is a maze that we did a couple of years ago for an outreach event. At the time we actually had walls running up and down the outside, and so it then had to sort of look to see which paths it could go down. I figured that would take too long getting the robot to go through the maze, so for this one I've just set out some obstacles that tell it where to turn left, then right, then left as it goes through. But so hopefully you can see that's using the rangefinder as well as the line sensor, and it's reached the end of the maze, and so it's now trying to follow it around. Something that we did have happen, I'll just bring it back to the start and reset it. Something we did have happen, so I mentioned that hopefully when it's on the line it'll see black. This one works really quite well, but occasionally we've had issues where the line can look black to you, but not to the robot. And so we had this happen with a different robot and a different maze last year, where we got some mats printed up, and on the draft version of the mat, it all worked really well. And then the printer did a nice, shiny, glossy version of the mat, and there was too much light reflecting off it, even in the black parts of the maze. So unfortunately, sometimes things go wrong on the day, and there can be an awful lot of debugging that goes on, especially with the children and the robots. So internally, this one uses an Arduino as the microcontroller on board, and you tend to program it over a USB cable from a blocks-based programming language that then compiles to Arduino C to load it up onto the robot.